Hey rivals, welcome to Bax Attacks. Today I want to give you a little bit of a different kind of episode. That's a guide to ancients to help with survival mode. Both Relic Wars and Survival Mode have something interesting in common in that you can only use a given ancient once in the Kingdom Raid or in a win streak. And so we'll be talking about what ancients might be best to use in this, what sequence to use them in, and what special conditions you might look for in order to use one of the lesser known ancients. For example, picking out Brander if the fire and curse towers are all over the base, or if you see a powerful fire tower that's on a dual primus conduit, confusion can be very handy in that type of situation. Now this guide for a change is not going to get too much into actual gameplay. At present there are about 46 different ancients, and that would make for far too long an episode, although I do want to come back and show some strategies and tips, especially for the lesser played ancients. I'd also point you to places like Tylo's got a very nice YouTube collection for high level gameplay especially. Now if you have max troops and you're familiar with the use of a lot of ancients, this guide probably isn't for you. In fact, I'd love for you to give comments in here. But if you don't have a high number of ancients max, or you simply have been relying on just a handful, and you're wondering on which ones to practice on or to consider using for survival mode, then I hope that this guide will be helpful for you. We'll begin by looking at the top tier of ancients in the games. These are the most strongest, the most powerful ancients, where you can have a greatest opportunity for beating out a max base, even if it's a level or even 2 levels beyond your own stronghold. If you don't have all of these, that's okay, but you'll definitely want to try to get them. And if they're low level, these are definitely ones worth investing a lot of primus in. So for each of these ancients that I'm going to talk about, I'm just going to highlight the key spells and give a couple of comments on how they might be used, or when you might want to avoid this ancient and use another one. We'll start with Lupita there, and that's a case of making sure that that first spell is cast and is renewed often. The second spell can disable a single defense, and it's good at that. And then when that defense goes down, you shift it to another one. Malice is a great ancient. It's all about the third spell with Malice, giving immunity and healing to your troops. And you really want to be sweeping your dragon across in order to distract the spell towers. That's kind of a common theme when you don't have direct control over the spell towers, is to make sure that you use your dragon to distract them. Selric, especially at legendary level, is a real powerhouse. There's not many bases that can withstand the use of Selric with a epic mana potion. And with that, you just preemptively bombard the base with the rain of fire to take out some key defenses or a primus conduit, and then use the second spell in order to provide protection against the spell towers. Yalanati is one that got buffed recently very nicely and is now a very powerful ancient. The third spell in particular is quite nice. The plague will recast itself if a building falls, and what it does is it reduces the damage from those defenses by 50%. So if you have got non-max troops, especially Yalanati is one to consider. The first spell, which applies double damage to a building, is particularly good on the stronghold when your troops have finally gotten to that. Forvale is also quite a strong one, especially if you can get him to an epic or higher level. The third spell just covers a huge area and lasts a pretty long time to disable a large number of defenses. The first spell, of course, is great too for providing some damage reduction. Zilla is, of course, a very powerful ancient, and again, all about the third spell. So having enough mana to be able to do that, whether through a boost or through the use of mana hunters, is very important with Zilla. What's also nice there is that because your troops really aren't taking fire, this is a good one for lower level troops to go against particularly tough bases. Amani is another ancient that got buffed very nicely and is a lot more powerful than you might think. If you have her and have not used her much, definitely one to check out. The first spell is kind of confusing, or it's hard to read or understand, but basically just get it down 3 times on the units, and they'll be very well protected. They'll be getting great healing, and also a lot of protection against dying when they're on the verge of death. They'll see some extra healing kick in. Also, the ability of the second spell to disable a key defense like a spell tower is also great. Siku can be a very strong ancient. That third spell with the mass confusion, if you see something like a lightning or a fire tower on a double conduit, if you can get that thing confusing and shooting at the other defenses, it can really tear some damage into the base. And the first spell can provide good protection against spell towers as well. Against anything but a Stronghold 16, a high-level Taliesin can just rip the base apart, and it relies on the power of the Ancient and not on the power of your troops to do that, so that's good if your troops are a little bit weaker. It is tougher on Stronghold 16 with the higher hit points, so that's one occasion where you may want to shy away from that. Jal faces a similar situation in which the spells are really geared nicely toward taking care of the spell towers, but without any kind of damage reduction, your troops can be in trouble if they're facing a particularly tough base with high DPS or with high hit points. This top tier of Ancients is clearly your bread and butter. You're going to want to use them for the toughest bases, the high end of your Kingdom Raid, or the tail end of a strength streak within survival mode. All right, now let's turn to a series of Ancients that are also quite strong, not quite as good as the top tier. They're not going to do as well against a max level base, a level or two higher than you, but they definitely have a strong chance of taking them out. And with good practice, you can get good results with any of the Ancients on this page. Marionette is situationally very useful. If you see a base that has a very strong Ancient, like the ones we just listed, where they rely on their first or second spell, Marionette can be used very well. For example, Lupita, Amani, Selric, Daji, or Valora, you're really just using the first two spells on that, and so Marionette is a great Ancient for those type of bases. Wukong, Berna, and Father Frost are also very nice, and along with Daji and Valora, the ability to have the troops not targeted for several seconds, or to have the defenses frozen or disabled is really quite nice. These Ancients don't last as long with their immunity as say Zilla or Forval. However, at 10 mana you can usually get them recast fairly good. You have to be very careful with the timing on spells, especially with like Daji and Valora. Now, Berna, if you haven't used her much, the second spell is one of the best boosts in the game. It provides not only a high level of damage reduction, but also a good amount of healing and damage increase for your troops as well. So it looks like, when I first started using Berna, it looked like the first or the third spells were very important, but really her second spell is the signature spell for Berna. Golgog, until very recently, was the most overpowered Ancient in the whole game, with the changes made to lightning towers and to flare towers removing positive buffs on your troops. Golgog has now seen less use, but can also be very useful. It's definitely good to know how to use Golgog and on what bases to look out for and what defenses to look out for. So if the spell towers are away from the stronghold, that's a great opportunity for Golgog to get in there. Moloch is a very strong Ancient at Epic, can get up to level 50, and that second spell can provide great protection against spell towers. It's really the same second spell as for Selric. The problem is Moloch's other spells are kind of useless. His first one in particular, don't ever cast that. Not as good as the Rain of Fire, but still very, very useful Ancient on the right base. Now, Erasmus and Kestra are really very interesting in that their second spell provides the ability to confuse a defense and to have it do some serious damage to the other buildings and defenses around it. Now, Kestra really only gets interesting above level 31, where you have the extra spell, the Marksmanship, that provides some really outstanding range for Wardens or for range troops, and they can then hang way back behind the soldiers and avoid taking a lot of damage there. So with both Kestra and Erasmus, using the second spell to confuse something like a lightning tower or a flare tower, something that does a lot of high damage, that can be actually a lot more effective, and definitely want to check out Tylo's recent video on Kestra. You may change your view of her if you watch that one. Alright, so next we'll consider another tier, the next 10 best Ancients. They're not really in any particular order, by the way, But the thing that characterizes these good ancients is that you can generally take out a base of your own level, but there's a chance that things might not go well and you might lose, and it's very difficult to beat significantly tougher bases than your own using these ancients. And this tier of ancients is characterized by the fact that they have some kind of combination of lightweight protection or a combination of damage and protection. They can disable maybe a single building for a little bit and do some healing, but they don't really do enough to either control the spell towers or to provide the buffs or damage that your troops need to get a win. But used well, these ancients can be very effective, especially in the initial stages of a survival mode streak or in a Relic War Kingdom raid. Hagar and Hera, for example, their second spell is actually quite nice in being able to disable spell towers or other defenses. And so with Hagar, if you can continually generate that 10 mana and use it to freeze the key defenses, you can do quite well with that. And the same with Adhira. Aegis and Alondra, Dalek, they also have spells, as does Dakemi, that her second one, that can debuff, or I say remove the debuffs that the spell towers will do. And then the first or third spells can be useful once in a while, but you really have to make sure that you have that you can see in advance when your troops are going to be hit by a spell tower, and have 10 mana ready in order to cast that debuff quickly when that happens. Banemaw is really quite interesting. The first spell lasts so long, you really just need to cast that once. And then spell 2 provides a lot of protection, and spell 3 some nice lifesteal. Now, if your troops get bogged down or caught up with insanity or freeze, you can get in trouble. And so really with all of the ancients listed on this page, the ability to distract the spell towers with your dragon is very, very important. Viscaria is unique in that using the dragon and the ancient together provides a lot of synergy. It works well together. And the idea here is to use Viscaria to sweep in order to provide some poison damage on a number of buildings and build up the mana to be able to cast that third spell, which is going to do a lot of damage over the buildings that she has passed over. So if you see a base where there's a lot of free mana available, or where you can drop one set of troops and then let Viscaria build up a lot of fly time, this can be very helpful. You really want to have a high level Viscaria for this to work well. Zalonia used to be one of the strongest ancients in the game, and just spamming that first spell was enough to beat just about any base. That's been reduced in effectiveness somewhat, but she can still be quite useful. It is important again to distract those spell towers, because if your troops get caught by high damage mithril or by freezer insanity, they can be in some trouble. Now, Lyris's third spell can be quite nice and does a lot of damage. However, she only goes up to level 30, and so you really can't get the high damage that you can with the Taliesin. And so when you're facing stronghold levels that are much higher than your own, or a stronghold 16, just really not going to be enough damage to take things out, and doesn't have any protection like Taliesin's first spell in order to protect the troops. So Lyris is definitely you'd want to use early on, and not good when the defenses that you're facing are max level. Alright, so we've looked at 3 different sets of 10 different ancients, 3 tiers, and unless you are planning on a really, really long survival mode raid, you probably don't need to go down to ancients number 31 through 40. But if you want to expand your experience with these, or want to experiment with them, these ones can do okay in the right situation. Brander, for example, if with that first spell providing protection against both fire and curse towers, if you see a base that has only those 2 towers, or where a different type of tower is completely out of range of the stronghold, then Brander might work well. And in fact, the second spell will help even your dragon sweeps to regenerate not just your troops. Anir, Wajin, Karis, and Nocti, those set of fire ancients are a lot of fun. They're good at lower levels, but it's very difficult to be beating tougher bases with these. They do take a lot of practice and skill to pull off. Now, Anir, for example, is very interesting. The first spell will cause the troops to prioritize a spell tower, and once they take one down, your troops will provide damage against all surrounding buildings. The third spell will cause them to disable any building that they're attacking, and the key thing to note here is that the damage provided to all the buildings from that first spell will work for disabling all the buildings. And so if you have mana hunters here, they're going to fly ahead very quickly to continue targeting spell towers. They're going to hit a number of buildings with that area damage, and they're going to disable pretty much everything in sight. Now, they can take out and wipe out a stronghold very quickly like this. However, if they fail, they are out alone in enemy territory, and they will get mowed down very quickly. So Anir is fun to play with, takes a lot of experimenting, but very interesting agent. All right, Admiral Lee likewise has a kind of a specialty attack with the second spell. You can cause your troops to prioritize a building, go after it, and the first spell provides some extra damage for that. And so if you can get your troops for a quick pass to the stronghold, for example, the use of all mana hunters, that can be quite effective. But if your troops can't take it down before a nearby spell tower freezes them or makes them insane, there can be a lot of trouble. And the bottom ancients listed there, Yagamo, Isabo, the Essence Master, and Nyrex, they can do okay versus bases that are maybe a level lower than you or weak ones your level, but it can be really difficult to take out hard bases with that, and you really have to be careful with spell towers and using your dragon to distract those if you use those ancients. Alright, and finally we just come to the last 6 set of ancients that are just very bad. Don't use them. Emberclaw, I hope they fix her and get her right. But first, the first spell is broken right now. The Ignite doesn't spread at all. Third spell is useful, but your troops are often dead by the time you can get your 15 mana there. The older mages, Aloni, Yulsara, Tyrus, Quan, and Gideon, they belong home in their spell towers. You should never take them out on offense. So that's my guide to ancient use for survival mode. Please leave your own tips or thoughts in the comments. And if you want to see a video guide showing gameplay for any of these, again, let me know in the comments, and I'll try to make those available. So thanks for watching, and good luck in the survival mode beta event.